Right, in this tutorial we are going to develop our markings on our side fronts for our pocket placement and the pattern pieces for the inside pocket bags. Now, since our last tutorial that we developed our extension on the center front piece and our collar, I've gone ahead and finished up those pieces off camera with my seam allowance, changing my stitching lines. Collar goes on the fold, so that was also shown in another video, how to adjust your seam allowance and bring it even to a line, and making your uh, grain line look like a on the fold placement. I've also added my text for my pattern pieces, identifying them. This is a collar. I actually need two of them, one for the top collar, one for the under collar, and then you use interfacing or a fusing inside the collar to help give it more stability for being able to fold up and over around the neck. For our center front, I have indicated that we're going to cut 4 of those because you're going to need a set for the outside of the jacket for the left and right side of the body. And then notice that when it folds back open, we see the inside of the jacket. So we want that to be the same fabric. Unless, of course, you wanted a contrasting fabric, then you would indicate that 2 of those are out of the contrast. And then you need 2 interfacings. So 4 total out of your main fabric and 2 interfacings, one for the left side of the body, one for the right. Now I've gone ahead and prepared all of those and done those, but now let's focus on our side front. As you can see, we've got a little indicator here that might show for the pocket. It could be a welt pocket, a double welt pocket. Those were discussed in your first sewing class, and your textbook goes into more depth on how to create those. We're going to create ours and for the purpose of, let's say, like a zipper would be centered within that rectangle square that is cut out. Now you can see that they are on a slight angle below our bust point level, kind of over to the side that begins to sort of wrap around behind our body. Now, to know how long to make that, you actually really want to do your homework first about finding out what size zippers are available to you. So I'm going to actually just pick a measurement. A 7-inch zipper I know is one of the standard sizes you can get at the fabric store, so let's take a look at doing that size. We are also going to use our rectangle tool, make sure that we get our attributes set, and by using my rectangle tool, I'm just going to click, and I have the opportunity to type in my dimensions. So I am going to actually make it, I think about half an inch wide for my zipper. Actually, you know what? Let's make it 0.75 for the width of the opening, and my length here, or height, 7 inches. All right, so there is my rectangle. It does seem a little bit big in comparison to that picture. I'm going to change its stroke level to match the others here. And I need to kind of get to one of the corners where I can kind of adjust its angle. But it does seem a little big, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of set that off to the side. Let's redraw one and check it out at, let's do 0.5, and we're going to guess or hope we can get a zipper at 5 inches long. You can find those online. Actually, it's just, if you're a fabric store, if you're wanting one right away. This one looks a little more in proportion to the look of our design there, and kind of placing it where do I want it on my side front. Okay, I'm going to go with that. That is my best educated choice based on what I'm visually seeing over here. The only way I know perfectly where I want that located is to actually, once my pattern is all done, print it out, tape together on my paper, cut it out of the paper, cut it out of fabric, sew up my sample, and put it on a dress form. That is the normal steps. At that point, I do an analysis to see, is my pattern as close to my drawing or close to my vision that I want. And then from that point, I can then begin to say, no, I need to move this over an inch, a half inch, up, this, that. Any changes then I can record and then come back to my original file and adjust any lines, segments, notches, measurements, whatever I need to do. But you first just have to begin somewhere and get it made. But back to our pocket here. So I've got my line on my pattern piece, and that's what we need. But now we're going to actually kind of use that to draw the pocket shape. I'm going to go ahead and use my pen tool. I want to come outside that pocket somewhat, probably about an inch. I'm just visually kind of doing this on the piece. And my pocket's probably going to be curved. Now it's okay that it extends past the seam line because in the garment, and we kind of want it to hang a little bit low for collecting things. All right, I got a rough shape here. I can always then adjust that shape as to how I want my pocket bag to look. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with that. Oop, well, I guess there. All right, so there's going to be my pocket shape. Now, when you think about sliding your hand into a pocket, you will actually have two. One that is the back bag part of the pocket, and the other is more of a facing that's right up against the front of the jacket, and your hand is in between those layers. So for our pocket pattern pieces, we are going to select this one and the marking for the square that's got to be cut out. We are going to make a copy of those and then paste. I'm going to just paste it in the center of my screen using Command V like Valentine because I did not need it to line up in the exact same place. That's all right. And with those selected, I'm just going to move them. I'm using my artboard over here for that pocket. And then the one that I drew, now I can move it. One of them had to keep the rectangle marking in place. So we've got two of these to make our pocket bag. I'm going to come back to those in just a moment. Let's just quickly finish out this side over here. I've got my closed path for my side front, object, path, offset path, half an inch for my seam allowance around there. I am going to change my stitching line to a dotted line, and I'm going to leave this as it is, but I'm actually going to go ahead and take it down one size in my stroke weight. My outline cut lines, I want to make it a white fill. And I also need to make sure I send that object to the back so that I can still see all of my notches. And then I can actually kind of zoom in and select my notches and just move them outwards towards the cut edge. Okay, I can click, hold, and drag if I want to. I just need to make sure that I try and keep them in the same alignment. This one gets a little trickier. For some reason, it wants to think that, oh, it was being fussy, but I can adjust it like so. There we go. Zoom, Alt, zooming out, and here is my grain line for my side front. There we go. And I'll update it with my side front cut too, and so on. Now back over here to our pockets. Let me move this guy up. Yes, they should have seam allowance around them too. So object, path, offset path. We're going to give them a half-inch seam allowance. The inner line, we'll make a dashed line. Same thing here, object, path, offset path. Okay. Now then, the inner two here, I actually want to make my dashed lines like so. As well as both of those, I can make a white fill, and I need to make sure those objects range, send to the back, make sure it's in the back. Now that one's obviously been added last, so it's in front of my dotted lines. So on those, I'm going to borrow one of these grain lines, make an alt, so I'm making a copy over here, and I can shorten that grain line. There we go, somewhere on my pocket, and another alt to make another grain line. So there are those. Last little tips to talk about here that we've got going on our jackets. We've got these little tabs, belt tabs, maybe with a snap at the end of them. For our shoulders and our sides, we can maybe make the assumption that they're going to be the same size. I'm just kind of eyeballing what I think would work for a width and a length on those. And again, those can be adjusted a little bit later if need be. Okay. But they do kind of have a pointed end here. So let's add a point on one end. There we go. And let's select just that one point, and I'm going to kind of pull it out a little. I'm going to add these 3 points to my selection and just slightly round them. How about that? That'll work. And now with this piece, this guy, we're going to offset path, but this time let's go ahead and make it a 0.25. That's a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just because those are much smaller. That's all right. The inner line will be the dashed line. There we go. I will need a front and a back for each tab. So 2, 4, and then at the shoulders we have 6 and 8. So I would give an indication of cutting 8 of these, as well as the fact that they're going to have snaps in them. We probably also want to make sure we cut interfacing with those. So I'll get that text added and you'll be able to see that a little bit later. And the other parts will be the sleeve. We'll pick up that in our next tutorial. Be sure you're saving your work as you go. I know you've put a lot of hard work into this and you don't want to lose it. So thank you for joining in, and good luck.